Welcome to the Collective Awakening Podcast, creating a loving and sacred space to share truth and knowledge, bringing together from around the world like-minded souls who wish to share their truth and wisdom in this great time of conscious awakening.
Hosted by Chris and Stephen of the Purple Mountain Spiritual, Health and Wellbeing Centre. Welcome, friends, to the Collective Awakening Live. I'm Chris, along with Stephen at the Purple Mountain Spiritual and Wellbeing Centre, and we want to welcome everybody to this special talk this evening. We welcome back our very good friend and spiritual medium, Rob Tweedie. And this evening, what we'll be doing is we will be having a bit of a chat, basically. We'll be sharing our thoughts on energetic and physical matters going on the earth, giving some guidance, hopefully. We're going to share our truth, our knowledge. We might not have all the answers, but all we can do is speak of our experiences, and hopefully that will help anyone. So during the course of this talk this evening, you feel free to ask any question you like. But as one of our teachers told us many years ago, if you ask the question, be prepared for the answer. So welcome, Rob. Welcome once again.
Thank you, Chris. Hi, Steve. Namaste. Thanks.
Hi.
Nice to be
Hi,
here.
namaste.
So, Rob, I feel it'd be a good place to start of what you've been feeling, what's been going on around you lately, anything you wish to share with us.
Yeah, sure. I've had a slight change of emphasis a little bit, and I've been doing a lot of quite kind of personal, in-depth, one-to-one readings with people, which I like. You get a really beautiful connection when you're with somebody for quite a while. It just seems to grow and grow. But it's amazing how you just continue to learn, Chris, because I've been discovering new things through these readings and through what the spirit messages are coming through. And I'll give you an example of something that really blew me away the other day. I was doing a reading for a lady. I'm obviously not going to make any names on it, but I was doing a reading for a young lady, and her father had recently passed into the spirit world, and I was aware of his energy, and I was aware of trying to build up the energy, bring him through, and try and connect with him. And she said, I got through that she had an item of his clothing. So I said, I said, got something a bit unusual to ask you. Have you got an item of his clothing, right? And she said, I have, as a matter of fact. She said, I've got his coat. It's like a trench coat. She said, it gives me a lot of comfort. She says, I've been wearing it, right? But the amazing thing, I then got this really strong connection with the father. And in the spirit world, he says, can you tell her something? So I said, yeah, of course, And he said, when she wears the coat, it feels like he is hugging her. He actually feels it in the spirit world. And it's fantastic. And I was got a real sort of shiver down my spine. So I relayed this to her, and I said, actually, he's telling me here now that when you put his coat on, he can sense this and feel it in the spirit world. And I've not actually heard spirit saying that specifically before. And it's a beautiful thing. So when I've kind of then gone away and researched it, I mean, it was amazingly comforting. I'd imagine that girl's probably got that coat on 24 hours a day now, but it's it was just a lovely thing. And it's the same as psychometry with this residual energy on things. And apparently in the spirit world, if the spirit is quite evolved in the spirit world, they can sense these things themselves. So what an amazing thing! And I have had it a lot. I've had spirit come through a lot. And say people wear somebody's ring, or they maybe wear a necklace or a bracelet or something that would have belonged to a loved one. Or I know in the spirit world they love that. That comes through a lot, and they say, well, we like the fact, it almost feels like part of us is living on with that person, that type of thing, that they love it. But I've never come across it where somebody in the spirit world has said they have that sensation that they can actually feel that, like, and it felt like a hug when she wears the coat. So I've been kind of telling people about this. I thought it was amazing, and it kind of really resonated for her. So it was lovely, and I'm finding that these kind of one-to-one type readings, they're lovely, and we're able to sort of push the boundaries a bit and get that even closer, even more personal connection than sometimes you can in a group, and so that's what I've been kind of doing lately.
Yeah, that's fabulous. I mean, it's always when you have a one-to-one reading, it's a very different experience. It can be a
Yeah,
lot more in depth and personal as well, and very special to that person.
yeah.
Yeah,
And I've also been more aware than ever of how keen and how important these messages are for our loved ones in the spirit world. You know, and I preach this or talk about this quite a lot, but it's so important for them sometimes. And I will even say to somebody, if I'm giving them a message, you know, in a demonstration or something, I will say to them, this message could be more important for the person in the spirit world than it is actually for you. Amazing for you to hear, but for the person in the spirit world, it's maybe something that they've just been waiting for a long time to ask, or that they're really sort of taking that anxiety with them. So another thing that I've been picking up as well is the different levels, right, of what they call retained characteristics. So somebody can come through in the spirit world, and I'm sure you guys have absolutely experienced this, but somebody will, if it's quite an evolved spirit in the spirit world, they can come through exactly as they were when they were on the earth, with the same mannerisms, the same talk, and the same jokey way, or serious way, or shy way, whatever it may be. And depending on, in many respects, how evolved they are in spirit, how closely they can send, almost transmit to us that energy at that same vibration, and they're just the same as they were in spirit. And I've been tuning into it as finally as I can, and it's a lovely experience, because I've started then saying little expressions that they would take, and suddenly people say, "Oh my God, that's my mum said that," or my dad used to say that, and they're coming through with their absolute characteristics rather than just factual, you know. And it's that I find enhances the whole reading and makes it so much more personal, because it's the evidence of their character and the way they are. What could be better than that? You know, it's a lovely, you know, it's a lovely evidence, along with maybe some factual things, you know.
yes, it's really important, that, because I feel sometimes um, in certain ways there can be evidence that everybody hangs the hat on. This is what must be, but it's simply bringing through the characteristics of that person. And I've seen it with other mediums, and I've experienced it with that. The person receiving the reading will say that's just what they would say and how they would say it,
Yeah, it's
and that
absolutely fantastic.
that is total evidence for that person.
100%, yeah, and it's lovely. And as a medium, sometimes you get almost into that kind of zone, and I'll find that I'm saying some things that I don't even realize I've said them or know why I've said them, but actually they are things, as you say, that the person in the spirit world would have said, maybe a little expression or a little, or something they've talked about or whatever. And I find that the kind of reaction from the person that's receiving this is really strong when that happens. That's it's like a kind of, you know, what you that feeling when the sort of penny drops and they think, oh my word, that is my you know, nan or my dad or whatever. And it's a lovely sort of closeness with that. And I've been finding that more and more. And I find you can sort of try and almost help as a medium, help with that energy to bring through that characteristic. And I think it makes the messages lovely. You know, I think it's just very personal for that person, you know.
Yeah, it's always lovely if sometimes when Stephen's doing a service, or even yourself, and if you sit and observe, and I like sometimes to observe people's faces as they're receiving the message, and they can
100%. Yeah.
they can really light up. There was one in particular that I'm not going to name the place or anything, that Stephen did recently, and I was sat next to a lady, and she was just in awe. She just went, "Oh, it just blew her away." But it was amazing to see, and perhaps a reminder of the power of this work as well. You know,
100%, yeah. And sometimes it's very good to have a reset or a restock and take and reevaluation in a way, because we're in a massively privileged position, you know. And this sometimes strikes me, and I don't know if you guys have had the same thing, but and we do so many readings, we do so many connections, and we kind of, and we get so used to it. But obviously, for the people receiving them, very often these are quite almost, I would say, life-changing encounters they have. and it's just occasionally brings you right back down to earth. I've had things recently where I've been doing readings for people who I've did maybe a reading for them, say 2 years ago or whatever, and they've messaged me and said, "Oh, I'd love another reading. Could I have another reading?" And I vaguely remember the person, right? But Chris, when it comes to the actual reading, they remember everything I've said from 2 years ago, and it's really a sobering thought, you know what I mean? And you said this to me, and this happened, and this is what you said this, and they've hung on every word. And sometimes I think we can just, because we're a bit more familiar with it, we're more used to it, we don't realise the real significance. There can be few things in life, maybe a doctor possibly, but there's very few things in life, in our sort of civilization here, where in our culture, where we can get so quickly so close to somebody, to say, I mean, what other thing could you go into a room and within 2 minutes somebody could be in tears, or tears of joy, tears of relief, that type of thing, in such a short time. We build these incredible connections with the person we're giving the message to, as well as the person in the spirit world, and it is a massive privilege, and it's something I would never kind of underestimate. It's incredible. And I talk to mediums who are kind of up and coming and who are practicing and who are quite new to it, and I say, hang in there, because if you sort of develop it, it is the most amazing gift. It really is. It's just it's life-changing for us as well to give those messages. Some messages you just move to tears. You think this is such a privilege to be able to connect with for this person who's missing somebody. I mean, so you get somebody who's thinks about somebody in the spirit world every minute of the day, and they just to know that they're there and okay is just amazing,
Yeah, absolutely. So, Stephen, what are your thoughts? We don't like you being quiet for too long.
No. It's sometimes it's important, I think, through life, when you're sitting, and you're listening and you're observing, you're learning and you're getting inspired, and it just resonates very much what you're saying, Rob. A lot of our own personal experiences. So it's very profound. And I think what's very important there as well, Rob, and I've met you a few times now, that your humility, and I think this is a quality that perhaps not many people have sustained over the years, particularly working with spirit, that it's a relationship. We don't work for spirit, we work with spirit. Absolutely. And that relationship, that humility, it's what keeps the ego at check. And I like that. It's a lovely, endearing quality within you, Rob, and it's almost like, being a child again. And it is a massive responsibility.
Absolutely.
I have to be reminded with that all the time. And it is right, the one-to-one readings are very, very different to the services, because you are very limited what you can say. And it's again that pressure, that system that's been created in a church environment where you've only got 5 minutes, you have to work in a certain way.
Oh yeah.
But in a private reading, ultimately spirit have got free reign. And that's why I'm going to be very controversial here. And that's why I feel that we as mediums and inspirational teachers, we create a loving space for people to remember, because the gifts within them, I call it a gift or whatever you want to call it. And it's just people needing to remember that gift. Remember, when we talk about development, and this is why as mediums, we've got to be very careful not to imprint our own way on other people, because that's what's happened in a way in a lot of the spiritualism movement, where things have been imprinted and it's tainted the true spiritual nature of what it is to give messages. And really, we all work on our own way, don't we? We work in our own unique way, which is incredibly special and huge privilege, massive privilege. I really see that. And it is amazing when you see people and they're in tears, and they're not sad tears, they're happy tears.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Stephen, I completely, that resonates with me so much. And although I know it is maybe slightly controversial, I am massively against structures and formats that we place on things. At the end of the day, it comes down to being true to the connection, true to repeating what you're told from the spirit world.
Yes.
But
Yes.
when you have a conversation with somebody in the spirit world, I mean, I don't want to be critical of other people, but I do sometimes see this kind of rigid structure, all about, well, I'm going to give this piece of evidence, then I'm going to find out why you're here. And it's a very stilted conversation. And when I'm teaching mediums, I always say to them, imagine, imagine a loved one in the spirit world, and you've got 5 minutes with that person. You're not going to want to. You could be saying, what's your date of birth, and what's your car registration number, and what did you have for your tea? If the message is going to be, are you okay, and or we love you, or we miss you, or something that they're wanting to ask, and how difficult for the person in the spirit world to be hampered by a structure that we're giving to them. We want it in a certain order, and I'm very much against that. I feel just go with the flow, and obviously there's a level of personal responsibility which I do agree with. I think you wouldn't deliberately say something, repeat something that's going to desperately upset somebody or something. You've got to be, there has to be some sense to it and a filter.
Yeah.
But within reason, I think you should just let spirit talk. What do you want to say? And whenever I have a good connection with somebody in the spirit world, I will always say to them, look, you've got 2 or 3 minutes now. If there's something you want to say it. And that's quite often when you get the wow moments. It's when they want to say, well, actually, I forgot to say I've left 50 quid under the bed, or whatever it is. It's there when you get the wow moments, when the spirit get a free reign, rather than asking specific questions too much. And I think it's taught in certain places, this kind of structure, isn't it? Of the way a message should go. And we're not clones. It should be a conversation like if I was having a conversation with you, Stephen, it would be totally different from one with you, Chris. And it's the same with everybody. We have different conversations, different relationships. So why would you be trying to achieve one standard kind of block message?
It has to be organic. It has to be natural.
Yeah.
Because, again, when we look at, we might be getting into the science side here, but when we're looking at the mind, and I don't know if you can relate to this as well, Chris and Rob, that, when I do the one-to-one readings, and it's amazing reading, all this lovely information, guidance, inspiration, and ultimately proof of survival of the spirit is proven. But then sometimes when they ask, well, can you get this specific name? And as soon as you use the mind, the link's broken. So it's an unnatural way. And then you find that as you are doing the reading, it should just come like a signal, like a communication. So the more the mind comes in, the ego, the mind, if you will, it stops the link. It has to be a very natural process, if that makes sense to the both of you.
It absolutely does. I agree. Although I totally agree with that. But I've also slightly moved away from when I was kind of learning and in the very early days being taught, where they talk about you switching off your conscious mind. That's quite I kind of get that, but I do also feel that spirit will work through the conscious mind anyway. So
yes.
and I think that people sometimes get a bit bogged down by thinking, is this me thinking this? I'm getting the color red here. Is this me thinking the color red? I think if we can overanalyze it, and I think the spirit will put it in through the conscious mind anyway. In fact, all spiritual work like that is through the conscious mind to an element anyway. So I think to try and switch off the conscious mind and be over concerned with it can hamper some people. So I say to them, don't worry, don't overanalyze whether it's you saying it or your conscious, or however you want to put it, or it's coming from spirit, because the chances are that spirit are going to be working through your conscious anyway. Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah, because sorry, go on.
Sorry, I just wanted to pick up on something there, because I think you made a really good point, Rob. And at one time there was really things got bogged down, I felt, in the spiritual movement, with people saying what's psychic and what's spirit and what's this.
Yeah.
It was just like, and what's forgotten is, when you talk about the mind or the subconscious mind, is the big thing spirit will use is our imagination.
100%. 100%.
Creativity. Yeah. That is a huge thing, that spirit can bring it in and communicate something to us in a way that we'll be able to pass on crystal clear to the recipient.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that, and I think that some teaching within the spiritual movement has made rods for their own back, because I get people who have been on previous classes, and I have to I try to rewrite it for them, because
Unprogram them.
that's exactly it. That is exactly it, because their biggest worry, and one of the biggest sort of things that the people who are coming into the movements, coming in and practicing and developing, the biggest thing that they say is, "Oh, I just don't know if it's me," And I say, well, just move away from that. Don't worry. Don't hamper yourself by that, and just give it through. And then you'll get that confirmational connection from the recipient, then who can then either confirm or not. So you don't need to overanalyze it yourself, if that makes sense. But it's
do you not think though, Rob, sorry to interrupt you there, just as that point that you're making, do you not feel it also comes down to a very important word which is not often used, is trust?
Absolutely.
You have to have 100% trust in spirit.
You do.
And I think if there is an element of not trusting, that link can, you can, when you I think questioning is really good. We've always been taught to question things, but as you build up that relationship with your guides, with your spirit team, you have to have 100% trust, if not 150% trust.
Yeah,
because you have to trust, and once you have that trust, and I'm sure, Rob, you've had this before when you've done services, and where people have said no. And as an observer, often people after said, actually, I can take that person. I can understand that. And that's where you've had to be strong and say, actually, I'm not being arrogant, but I know what I'm picking up is right. You please take it away with you, if that makes sense.
Oh, 100%. I mean, that's you've picked up on another interesting thing, Steve, there, where we were all you're kind of indoctrinated to a certain extent as a medium, with people, either getting a yes or a no. It seems to be like the sort of the sign of whether they're a good medium or a bad medium. This kind of needing this yes and no answers, And I can give you an example, Steve. I will literally, this is the day before yesterday, I was doing a service in the Lake District, and I went to a lady, right? And I literally said, I've got the name. I'm looking at you. I said, I'm connecting with the name Chris. Can you place this name somewhere, right? And it wasn't you, Chris, but it was the name Chris. And and she kind of looked a bit bewildered, And she said, "Oh no," she said, "I can't think of anybody." She said, "I don't know anybody." She says, and then she was going on like this, and I'm thinking, this is very strange. And then she said, "Oh, my name is Chris." And I thought, well, this is, honestly, that's what she said, but after about 5 minutes, she's racking her brains, and so we do have to make allowances, and you do get that a lot, Stephen, where people, and the nature of giving a message as well, people can feel a bit bombarded or feel a bit under pressure, all those type of things, and if we're hitting them with names and dates and all that type of stuff, I don't expect them to remember it all, but you reach a sort of point, and I'm sure you guys are at that point as well, where where you kind of almost know something. I'm quite happy to say I'm wrong. I don't expect to get everything 100% right, but you sort of get a sense of when you need to take something back when it's actually wrong, or you just leave that with the person, because as you said, Stephen, 9 times out of 10 afterwards they'll come to you and say, "Oh, I'm sorry, it was my great auntie, I didn't realize," or and that happens a lot.
But have you got this as well, Chris, and Rob there, where sometimes where you do a service, and I'm not saying this in a judgment, but you have message grabbers, and you'll have people that will put the hand up, and you give them the message, and even though they can take it, you're like, something doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel right. There's actually messages for you, and you have to be so strong and committed to say it's not for you, it's for this person, and this is through experience, and not to be afraid of judgment, and not to be afraid, because that's a big thing when we've run development classes, is this fear of getting a no, and sometimes the no is part of the process. I remember when I started, I was shaking in my boots.
I used to feel like, I think we lost Rob for a minute. I used to feel like when I first started that if I was to hear a no, I'd just turn into powder. I'd disappear. I couldn't have to shrink. But you're quite right, and you actually learn more from the no's. If that makes sense.
It's part of the experience. I'll tell you a quick interesting story there about Gordon Higginson. everybody that is probably in the spiritual movement would probably know about this story. But his mother did a lot of training with him. His mother was quite hard with Gordon, and one of the experiments, and this is interesting, a lot of stuff we've done at the Purple Mountain, a lot of experimental work with Albert, because it's the experiments that really help us trigger our intuitiveness and our connection with spirit. Hi, I was just telling a story, Rob, about Gordon Higginson.
Oh, I missed part of it. I got literally, I've moved to another device, but I missed part of it. Sorry.
So
we're just having a quick chat about you, Rob. Just where you're on.
It's a burden, that's okay. I'm fully accept. Hey, I'm quite pleased with the technology because I got straight back on another device. So that's the battery ran out on that one. So fine, yeah.
Everything for a reason. So
sorry,
Gordon Higginson, a very renowned medium, trance medium and working medium, and his mother did a lot of training with him, and you probably understand this, particularly in development groups and awareness groups. You're creating a platform of doing lots of different fun experiments to really help us trigger that that psychic or spiritual connection, whatever you want to call it, whatever you want to name it. And one of the experiments she did was she blindfolded Gordon, and she said that in this room, there's about 50 people in this room all wanting a message. And she would blindfold him and she would walk him in this room, and actually nobody was in the room.
Oh, wow.
And
right.
And it was all, and Gordon often talked about the biggest thing in a mediumship is having trust in your guides and having that spiritual connection, having that. That's what binds that spiritual connection, having that 100% trust. Yeah, it's fascinating. And it's experiment.
Yeah, 100%. And that is a very good mantra to trust with it, and to just come out with it. And even when if you want to call it the conscious mind, thinks that the person, there's no way they're going to understand this, or this is something very obscure or something. That's just to give that off, because it will have been given to you for a reason. And even if they don't understand it immediately, there is a reason why we give that off, And I see this as well I don't know if you've come across it in open circles where people talk, and I have reservations about it, but people talk about getting these split links, and I think I'm with two different people, and and two different spirits are talking about the same person or two different people. And if say, for example, somebody gives out a name or something, and then more than one person says, yeah, right, we both understand the name Susan or whatever, and then you go through reams of trying to give evidence to kind of split these two people up. I much more these days lean towards just trusting it, but going to the person that you feel guided to, And if I'm teaching that in a circle, I'll stop the person and because to ask multiple questions, and I'm sure you've seen it yourself. And it goes on to these people like message grabbers; they'll all start saying yes to everything, and it'll become the most obscure kind of things. Were you born in a bathtub in Barbados? And they both put their hands up, yes. So you can never split it up, it gets ridiculous. So it's kind of it's uncomfortable to watch sometimes. So I always teach people, go with the person that you feel connected to. And I'm going to tell you something, but it's quite controversial, but I know this to be so. Even if you've got two people and you say two people who both understand a specific piece of information, right? And you give them another piece of information, they both understand it, right? If you go to one of them, whichever one you feel drawn to, I would often just go with the one that I feel almost most comfortable to give a message to myself. I just feel comfortable with that person. Once you start the message for them, even if the message originally was for the other person, their own loved one, it will be correct, and their own loved one in the spirit world will come in, and it happens every time, and I see it, So whoever they pick, it's not going to be wrong, because as soon as you get that dialogue with a person, and they start saying, oh yeah, you say, do you understand everything I've said there? Yes, I do. Yes. As soon as that kind of connection is built, their own loved one in the spirit world will come in, even if the message was originally for somebody else, But I know that to be the case. Yeah.
I know, Stephen, but you mentioned that before many years ago. You might not remember of something happening like that, but I think you made a very good point there, Rob. And I feel a lot of it comes down as mediums is knowing ourselves, knowing who we're working with, because otherwise, when we encounter those, if you want to call it a split link or two people, if we're not able to go back to our intuition and who's working with us, it can end up a right mess.
Yeah, no, it can, yeah, and we've all seen it. Where I know that what I said was a slight exaggeration, but there's nothing worse than, and people hang on to it as well. There's the human psyche with this, and they hang on to it, and they want that message. The two people want that message, and you almost get a sort of competition with that, and that's not ideal. So I would always say to the medium, and I will stop somebody in the circle, say, oh, wait a second, just go with the person that you're drawn to, and it doesn't have to be a big kind of like somebody pointing an arrow at somebody or somebody glowing or something. Not necessarily that. It could be just simply, who would you feel more comfortable, at this moment in time? Who do you feel more comfortable with? Well, that's going to be where you're going to be going, And so I it's one of my pet hates, because, and I feel sorry for mediums, because I tell you, I've seen some situations, and this is not being critical at all, but I've seen some situations where they get into this kind of merry-go-round where they asking questions. They've asked about 4 or 5 questions, and the person's the more and more obscure the things that are coming through, and then the people are going, yes, we understand, we understand, right? And so suddenly they'll go for something incredibly obscure, like, what was this person, I don't know, did they drown or something like that, right? And then suddenly both people say no, and they've lost the whole thing.
Yeah, that's enough.
But do you not think I'm going to turn this conversation on its head a little bit, because I feel that it's hard not to get into the politics and into judgment into this conversation. However, just as an observer, over many years now, nearly 15 years of experience in the spiritual movement, you do get frustrated when that direct link is not created. However, I feel that perhaps we all learn not only in the light, we all learn through life, through the times of darkness, uncertainty.
Of course,
and I think sometimes people need to learn, or choose to learn, the hard way. So when you look at split links, people developing mediums, they have chosen themselves to maybe walk a bit of that path for them to learn and to understand. So we should be posing questions to them, like you've said there, Rob, absolutely spot on. Now, you go to these two people here. Does this feel right to you? And if as soon as they ask themselves, actually, no, it doesn't. And I'm sure we've all been there in open circles, in services where our link could be stronger and it's fragmented and we don't go direct. And so we've experienced that. So in a way, we need the duality. We need the strong mediums, and then the mediums that perhaps maybe have a weaker link. I'm not saying mediums are better on others. I'm not saying that. So that people in the audience can see the difference as well, if that makes sense. So we need the light and the dark. We need the good and the bad. We need the good churches, the churches that don't function well, as teaching us about development and about spirit, because that's how we learn, if that makes sense.
Very good point.
Yeah, no, it's a very good point. Yeah, yes, you do. You do. And it's a little bit on a basic level, sort of horses for courses. You can't have 11 goalkeepers in a football team, that type of thing. You need those comparisons, and I totally agree with you. But what I feel, digging into that a little bit more deeply, I do feel the spiritual movement generally, we have made a rod for our own back, and people are terrified. People who start out in mediumship, it should be a joyous, fun thing, and if they get a little thing wrong, so what? They're kind of enjoying it and having a go, and I agree. And you've got to learn, Stephen, from from your mistakes, like those things. You've got to learn from those things and learn from other people and pick out the best practices and all what works for you and this type of thing. But I feel that it has become too political. It's become too competitive. I can't stand the thing where on social media, I'm sure you see it, where people commenting about all different mediums, well, this is your great medium and you're no, and I've seen this, and as if we're standing, as if we're being judged by our peers. And that's really nothing to do with spirituality. We, if anything, be judged by the world of spirit, not by our peers. And so I feel we've made that rod for our own back. And people who are learning are so scared. They should be perfectly happy to say exactly what you said. They're perfectly happy to say, oh, actually, this message just doesn't feel quite right. I'm going to just move back and start again or whatever. They should be happy to do that. If necessary, even to sit down and say, I'll come back to this in a few minutes when I've just got myself together. But people are so frightened now of doing anything like that, and it's a shame that we're putting pressure on ourselves, and when we put pressure on ourselves, we don't trust as much,
But do you not think? Sorry, Chris, and I want you to chip in this as well, because there's a passion of yours. Is that it comes down to you use the word there, Rob, patience, and I think there is this also this fear of rushing people's development, and I remember, Chris. Me and Chris were sat in a home circle for 10 years before we just sat, meditated, sat with spirit. And I think going back, and I think maybe the movement as a whole has forgotten this, because the movement began in home circles. The movement began in seances. And I think maybe we need to go back to our roots. And if it takes 10 years, the old pioneers, you hear stories, and I want to be a medium. Well, come back in 5 years when you found yourself, when you've learned a little bit about yourself. Come back 10 years when you're ready. And sometimes it took that long, but you have to be right, because this work is very, very unique. It's very powerful stuff.
Yeah, no, I absolutely echo that, Steve. I agree with you.
Yeah. So
what's your thoughts, Chris?
Well, yeah, I feel like I had quite a few. I totally go with Rob about the fear factor, and what it all comes down to very basically is the word judgment, and we have to practice what we preach.
Yeah,
very, very simple. And one of the ladies that we come across when we began this work said that a medium should be the same on a platform, if you want to call it, as they are off the platform.
Yeah.
And this is about you being your true self. And a little bit of that, I suppose, could be down to the way things run, that people feel they can't be themselves all the time. And that brings us like full circle to what you said, Rob, is working in your own way and being free. And I've seen a lot of people over the years get very angry that other mediums aren't working right to the way they feel they should.
I know, and I can't get my head around that. I know.
And do you know what I can't understand about it, Rob, is it's very simple. If they're not working with spirit, it's not going to last. So you don't even need to intervene.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you. What I've got an interesting sort of angle on this, though. Why do you think it is, as a spiritual movement? I mean, what I want to say is I've done all kinds of things in my life, all sorts of unusual experiences, qualified as a nurse, I've done all sorts of stuff. And the spiritual movement and the people within it, and I'm going to say specifically the mediums, generally, are so judgmental. There is a massive level of, that sense of, if we put somebody else down, it's going to raise us up, and they're missing the whole ethos of it, and it saddens me a little bit. And I've moved away from a lot of places where there is that energy. I'd rather have the energy of the audience or the recipients than the energy of the
perhaps what Stephen said, there's a point that it's something that has to come up and we have to go through. And those who are aware of it, it's a learning curve, because I mean, I can only speak for myself. Look, and it makes you more aware of yourself, that, oh my goodness, I'm going to really try my hardest not to ever go down that route, because that's really toxic and uncomfortable. I just wanted to swerve things a little bit. I can ask you both this question, actually, for anybody that's watching and they're just getting into any sort of mediumship or clairvoyance or working with cards. What would be your advice? We'll start with Rob, to people just starting the journey.
Okay, my advice would be the very first thing is stick at it. Okay, it's people don't say it enough, but it's the most amazing thing. We touched on it at the beginning of this conversation. So the goal that you want to achieve, if you can just even once get a message across to somebody that they've been desperate to hear, or that's giving them such relief, is the most amazing thing. So my biggest piece of advice is stick at it through the lows and the highs. Okay, don't, as you said, Stephen, don't expect it all to just come at once. Be patient with it and let it develop. And I know it sounds corny, but spirit will do things at the pace that's right for that person. And you do get some people that I don't advocate that you absolutely have to kind of have 20 years experience or something before you can be on a platform or anything like that. I don't put those restrictions on, because there's people who just are very naturally very mediumistic. But be patient with it and don't expect it all to come at once. That will be my main advice. And the word trust, that should be the mantra, the word trust, trusting in the spirit world.
Absolutely. So, Stephen, what's your thoughts?
Well, I love that, Rob. Thank you for sharing that, and I can really resonate with that. But also, I feel sitting regularly, I don't call it, I've changed my mind from using the word discipline. It's more of a devotion. This work requires a devotion to a spiritual practice, which is unconditional love and loving kindness from the heart. And I think, going back to the point you were making before, and I think self-development, invest in yourself, constant investment. And that's where healing is also part of the spiritual movement that has been tainted by a lot of ego. And actually healing is an integral part. So I feel any medium, any psychic, tarot reader, get into healing work. Healing will work so nicely side by side. Sit with spirit, sit with your spirit. And my other point is meditation. For me, meditation, I find also a little bit controversial there, because there's a lot of what I call natural mediums that, and it reminds me when I used to go to school when I was younger, I used to have really brainy friends that never revised, that just turned up on the exam, got A stars. There's me having to study 4 hours at night. But overall, meditation for me doesn't only just help you, it helps bridge that link. The link's there with spirit. I'm not saying that, the links will always be there with your guides and your inspirers, but I think, stuff happens to us during the day, through the week, with relationship, with family. At the end of the day, we're a spirit in a physical body. So that physicality does get in the way. We eat wrong sometimes.
Yeah.
We have a bit of a bad day, and that sometimes can affect our link. So I feel meditation, regular meditation, will help us lift from those negative vibrations, if you will. And my last point there is, I've fallen into trap into this. Chris, you have a little bit, but I'm sure you have as well, Rob. It's when you're starting out, don't burn yourself out. Because within us, there is a core energy, and that core energy has to last a lifetime, has to last for 40, 50 years of our life, that gift. Now, when I started, I was doing 5 services a week. I was a full-time uni, full-time job. And when you're younger, you don't feel it as much. But when you get a bit older, you get a bit more tired. And that's one of my lessons to learn, is slow down and enjoy what Rob was saying. Absolutely. I think enjoy what you're doing and smile. And it's amazing. Enjoy it as an adventure. It shouldn't be hard or difficult. Everything should work effortless. And if you are committed and devoted to that spiritual path, that true path that you've chosen as part of your divine path, then it'll be absolutely amazing. Now, it's not going to be easy, because Rob, you know this more than anybody, being a spiritual medium doesn't make your path any easier. We have the hardships like everybody else.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Very, very powerful words there.
Yeah, a couple of really, really excellent points there, Stephen. one of the points I really pick up on there is our own physicality. That does make a difference. If you imagine that we're like a radio receptor sort of thing, you know, the better quality of the radio, the better the reception is, you know. So within reason, keeping ourselves in a physical way as good as we can, it massively does help. It does help, and it helps you to be receptive. And also, it is very true what you say as well, that how you are externally, with the mood, the day you've had, the things that influence us on our daily routine will affect our connection with the spirit world. You know, spirit will still come through, but our kind of crispness and our connection can alter according if we're tired, for example. And I,
yes,
you know, sometimes you can give a service. I'm sure you've had the same, where you give a service, and especially if it's saying maybe an hour and a half or something. After about an hour, your energy does start. You know, you're more struggling with the connections because your energy just depletes, you know, as you're going along.
And
so
that's not spirit, and that's not spirit's fault. A lot of people, and that frustrates me, because you have mediums that sometimes, you know, say that get angry with spirit, and it's like, it's not spirit, it's our lack of preparation. Spirit will always be there. Your guides are there, your loved ones. It's we are an important component. So we have to prepare the physical. We have to prepare it. It's an important component.
I think the other thing as well, something I fell into early on, and I did it a few times before I learned, was that when the demonstration's finished, it's finished. And I used to always go that extra one.
Mm-hmm.
And I know quite often that extra one wasn't quite what it should be. And the lesson I very quickly learned is, you can feel when it's your last one if you're following it. Sometimes out your love and compassion, you want to do another. But something I learned from that is your last message on a service should be as strong as your first.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and yeah, I agree with you there. And if you feel that is the time to just to stop that service at that point, is once you feel that, you can. And I've fallen into that trap as well, wanting to go that extra mile. You can see somebody in the congregation or whatever who's just desperate, you know, for a message, and you kind of from compassion, you want to go to that person. But you're quite right, it's your energy can deplete. And you're also completely right, where it is the human energy, it's our own stamina, if you like, rather than than spirit. Spirit's there as a constant, you know. But another thing that I've absolutely experienced, and so consistently, it's incredible, where if things are going wrong, and you, Steve, you touched on that beautifully, about saying just because you're a medium, it doesn't mean everything's a bed of roses. In fact, quite the opposite. But being an empath, which we all are, it can be a massive kind of albatross around your neck, or a millstone around your neck. It can be very difficult at times. But what I find consistently is when I'm feeling low, particularly with spirit stuff, or I've got something that I've got to do tomorrow, and I don't relish the thought of it, or I've got to get up early, or something like that, right? I always find that spirit you can do something amazing to re-inspire you. And when running the open circle I had, was really quite a headache, because it was very, very busy. You know, we used to have 50 or 60 people, and organising that and doing everything around that was quite kind of stressful. So there was many times when I thought, I could do without the stress of this, and I don't feel like I'm tired and all this, you know. And they'd be the days when I'd go and do the circle, and it was mind-blowing. Something amazing would happen, or it would be just jam-packed with people, or, you know, it always, spirit have this amazing way of lifting you back out, and when you need it, of giving you that extra bit of inspiration. It's happened to me dozens and dozens and dozens of times. It's amazing, you know.
I just want to ask, Chris, can I ask you a question and ask Rob a question? I'm going to turn around here.
We've got a question somebody's asked then after that, so go for it, Steve.
Yeah, so it's really about the future. Now, we were talking about this before we went live, didn't we? And about let's talk about the movement. The movement as a whole I feel, is very fragmented, and there should be more of a union. And I feel, which we've always been taught, haven't we, Chris, at the Purple Mountain by Spirit, that we should always change, we should always evolve and progress, ask questions, learn new things, move forward. And if you don't, things become stagnant. Now, I think the cusp of mediumship will always remain the same as it has done for thousands and thousands of years. So when people talk about spiritualism, well, we're working with spirit for tens of thousands of years. It's not something that's happened since the 1800s. It's been going on for thousands. The Egyptians were doing it. The Romans were doing, the Celts, the Saxons, the Native American Indians, they all spoke to spirit. They pass forward ancestors. Now, there's a lot of change happening in the movement, what we call the New Age movement. And you've been part of that quite a bit, Rob, what we call the mind, body, and spirit, which a lot of other organizations are very against. Now, what does the future of mediumship look like? And if you can't answer that, what would you like it to be? Because you both are delving into different forms of mediumship where, when we look at maybe past lives, when we look at reincarnation, and I see, just my very small point there, equally important than the messages themselves. Do you think that's something that would be the future there, Rob, first, and then maybe Chris can answer that after, if my sort of question there made sense?
Yeah, no, it really did make sense. And my, if I can answer it by first off saying where I feel we are now, okay, where
Yeah.
I feel that we absolutely have to evolve, as you said. We have to be current, okay? And if current involves even being commercial or attractive or making it attractive, whatever attracts people to be interested is fine, okay? And yeah. I know for sure that that's fine with spirit, okay? And it's no coincidence now that the very traditional churches are all very quiet and struggling, and yet there's a massive demand for it now. And the sort of some of the centres are absolutely thriving, that are very forward thinking, and that's not a coincidence. I'm reassured. I went through a phase of feeling a bit despondent because churches and stuff were suffering so much. The Sundays, a lot of churches don't do Sunday services anymore and things like this because it's just too quiet, you know. Yeah. What I found, there's a groundswell of interest, you know, things like and things like for one-to-one readings, this type of thing is massively popular. So I don't feel the interest in spirituality, into the afterlife, that type of thing. I think that's booming, and I think it just needs tapping into more in a more kind of relevant way to people. Okay, now in the future, I feel the future of spirituality in this way. I feel as long as we do move with the times and we do evolve and we do make it relevant to people who are around, just the way we deliver it, the environment we deliver it in and things like this. That's why something like Purple Mountain is fabulous, because it's an environment where people want to go, and people are much more discerning now. If they go somewhere, they won't go out of just a sense of duty or a sense of just going. They want to go somewhere where they have a lovely experience, and the whole experience is the environment as well, is the friendly welcome, as well as all the spiritual side of it, you know. So it's that whole package, and we mustn't get complacent with it. And I think if we don't, I see the spiritual movement booming. But I have to say, and people hate me for saying it, but I don't see that necessarily through the traditional churches. They need to move forward. Now, that's being quite general, because there are some churches which are run by fantastic presidents, and I know some that are fantastic, and they're very forward thinking, but within their limitations that are put on them, within that they run fantastic centres, and those are the ones that are quite busy, you know. But generally speaking, my answer to you is I think it will thrive. I'm not worried about the future of our movement or our religion or whatever you want to refer to it. I'm not worried about that. I think it needs to evolve, but I feel it will. And there's enough people like you guys and me and people like that will make that happen. And because the groundswell of interest is there, Steve, it's more interest. I'll just tell you one thing. I'll go to Chris. A few years ago, and I'm a little bit older than you guys, I think, but a few years ago, if I'd have said to my work colleagues, "Oh, I'm a medium," right, I'd have got a massively mixed response. Some would have said, "Oh, you know, you're a fraud," or, you know, a charlatan, or whatever, you know, and I would have got a massively, and so a couple would have been a bit of interest, right? Now I have no hesitation in telling people what I do, and every single one, "Oh, that's amazing," you know, "Oh, have you got anything for me?" They usually say, don't they, or a message. So that groundswell of interest is, everybody has an interest in it, you know. and that needs to be tapped into. So that's my answer to that.
Yeah,
Thank you.
absolutely, and a lot of good stuff being shared. So I hope everybody's enjoying it so far. So we're going to just go to a question that was earlier. I'll try and get it up on the screen. There we go. It's Joanne Cox, and she asked, "I'm often told I should be sitting in a circle. How do people know that? Is it something they sense with me? Thank you." So, anybody feel they want to answer that, Rob?
Yeah, certainly. Yeah, Joanne. Yeah, nice to speak to you. Okay. Often I have said the same things to people, or I will say you need to develop this kind of this interest or this seed of knowing or wanting to know. You need to kind of develop it in some way, and a circle can be a perfect way of doing that, or a development class, or that type of thing. Often I think as mediums we will see something in somebody, or you could have a conversation with them, and you just sense that kind of that seed, that interest has been put there, and it's actually been put there by spirit. The very fact, Joanne, that you're watching this broadcast, that you're participating, and that you're messaging and asking questions, just already that is being ignited within you. Okay, I don't know how far on your journey you are, but spirit put that in that curiosity into you to make you to follow that. And so as a medium, I will often say that to people because I see that within them. I see that spark, or I see that interest which needs further developing.
Yeah, and you, Stephen, thank you for that, Rob.
Yeah, lovely. Yeah, and what Rob was saying, spirit aren't always going to give us, they're not going to give everything on a golden platter. They plant little seeds within us, and they just have to wait because they can't interfere. Because if they interfered in every aspect of our development, there is this divine plan that's maybe beyond some of our comprehension. So that everything's happening for a reason. And I think maybe it'll bring in a little bit of a larger point there as well, that I feel personally, yes, development circle and awareness circles are good, but they are not, they only last for so many weeks. And that's where I feel home circles, if you can, Joanna, if you can get an invite or set your own home circle up, that's how a lot of the original medium started off in home circles. And even if it's just 2 or 3 of you just sitting around a candlelight each week, just for an hour, sitting with spirit, that is in a development. That's very profound. That's in a development, and you will develop in your own time, and there won't be that pressure. Now, if there's not an opportunity for home circles and things like that, that's where I feel probably, in my opinion, remember, it's just my opinion. It doesn't mean it's right. I can only share my own experience. That's where I find that open circles, for me, are a lot better than development circle and awareness classes, because there's a danger of often teachers, and we fall in trap in that, imprinting our own way on this on the developing sitters, where I find that sometimes when sitters awaken, they have a lot more knowledge or experience than I have. And this is why you should never put yourself in a pedestal, in a circle. And that's where I find open circles is a lot more, you stand up. Yeah, the medium will guide you and inspire you, to work a certain way. But I find open circles or home circles being the key. So obviously, Joanna, spirit are guiding you to be there for a purpose, but that's part of the great adventure, isn't
it? Chris,
yeah,
I just feel inspired. I hope this is okay. I just wanted, for that Joanna.
Yeah.
I wanted to just read a card for her. Would you mind? I've just
that's absolutely fine.
As I was talking and listening to Stephen, I was shuffling my deck, and this one's come out, so I just want to read it for her. It's this.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. This is for Joanna. Okay, it's the Don't Compromise card. Okay, this is a card which is quite instructional and giving a kind of message. Okay, the card is saying, don't settle for second best. That's the first thing I want to say. Go with your convictions, the things that you know are right for you, and don't. It usually connects to either a direction that you're going in or something around you. And I would say, don't listen to. This is one thing, judge for yourself. Don't listen to other people trying to put you off, okay? It's almost like people around you all have their own angle on something. You need to know, go with your heart and know what's best for you. That could well relate to your spiritual journey, because as we were answering the question, that card came out to me. The card also, just quickly, is a sign of change as well. If you look at the background of the card, there's all green at the back here, at the bottom here, more in the past. This is more now across here, and this is more in the future. Now, so the card is the right way up. So your direction of travel in your journey is right. You're going from this kind of green to this beautiful light color here. You could almost draw a line across the card here. So I'd say this is a time of change, and there's almost a sense of part of you living in the past and part of you in the future at the moment. It's a sort of transition but it's a very forward, progressive card. So just wanted to do that, Chris. Thanks.
Oh, thank you for sharing that, Rob. And within that message, there's good advice for everyone, I feel, that they could take. It's been a fantastic chat tonight, and as always, it's gone the way it's meant to. And I think there's been some wonderful truths spoken and some wonderful knowledge shared. But I wanted to just finish up with, I feel, as I spoke with you, Rob, before we went live tonight, that we would be slightly ignorant to ignore what is going on in the world right now. And we don't want to get into politics, because that is, we'd be here till midnight or further. We really would. But what I'd want to ask you, Rob, is what do you feel if people are feeling things are getting on top of me a little bit? Oh my God, what's going to happen? And get themselves into that hole at the moment. What advisement would you give to those out there who perhaps feeling that way or feeling overwhelmed?
Yeah, right. That's so important for people like ourselves, and a lot of people who would listen to this. And we are all empaths, and when something as kind of difficult and challenging and upsetting happens, it affects us incredibly. It's really difficult. I don't know about you guys, but I try to limit how much I watch the news, but I don't want to be ignorant of it either. I like to know what's going on, and I don't think we can just ignore it. As you rightly said just now, we just can't ignore it. But I don't want to kind of saturate myself with it, because it's such a negative energy. And I find that I've seen scenes on the news where I've been sitting in our living room and literally crying, and it's terribly difficult. And it brings out a whole range of emotions in people, emotions of anger and being furious with individuals and armies and things like this, to feelings of helplessness, to being frightened. There's a whole massive range, but because we're getting kind of fed this, and it's so the gravity of it and the seriousness of it, all those emotions are intensified so much, so that it feels really strong within us. Okay, now my kind of guidance and how I deal with it is definitely not to shut yourself off from it completely, but I would say don't like watch the news. Some of my friends are watching the news like 24 hours a day, getting up in the night to watch it, and there's this continuous coverage, and I think that can be too damaging. So I would say keep abreast of things and aware of things in a healthy way, and also allow yourself to have opinions and have views on it. That's absolutely normal and natural. But I would massively say we need a balance within us, okay? And so put back the balance, even if it's spoiling yourself with something, if it's spending a bit of time with a loved one, if it's the old things about, having a puppy or whatever it may be. It's kind of those things. If you can, get yourself out into the country, get yourself out for a walk, let yourself walk in the rain, all those things. It's putting that balance back. If you put the balance back in, you'll be okay. Well, the danger is it can saturate you and it become very one-sided. one-sided, and you're just getting a negativity from it, you know. And if you do feel desperate, allow yourself to work through that feeling. Know that it's okay to not be okay, you know, and it's quite a human emotion to watch. If you watch that suffering and what's going on, regardless of any political views or anything like that, the compassion, you know, that you feel within yourself, allow yourself to feel that. That's healthy. And if it makes you cry, if it makes you angry, that's also healthy. But just be aware of that balance and putting back, you know. That's my message to people. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Rob. Thank you for those words from the heart, and really important. Yeah. So, Stephen, what's your thoughts?
Well, how can you go what Rob said there? And just a couple of points. I know this is incredibly hard for people, but on the physical, I'm going to talk about 2 points: the spiritual and the physical. So the physical sense, try to observe and don't react. I know that's incredibly hard, and unfortunately, what's happening in the world's happening for a reason. There might be things that we don't understand, the level of darkness and fear that's been instilled in humanity, but that's happening for a reason. The fear is awakening humanity. We need more of it. I'm going to be very controversial. We need more of it in the world, so that this is such a big time. So many people are awakening and questioning and waking up. People protesting. People are waking up. This is all good stuff. Good stuff is happening in the world, so don't be guided by fear. The other point is surround yourself with like-minded people, just very much like what Rob said. Surround yourself with like-minded people. And the other on the spiritual, which is probably the most powerful, is never underestimate the power of love that you can send out to the world. If that's through prayer or meditation, be positive every day. If it's 2-3 minutes, send out of it a bit of a prayer. Send out your light and your love. Be positive. Don't always believe what you read. Trust in your intuition. Observe, don't react, and send your love and light out, even to the people that are causing all the rubbish that's happening in the world. Even send your love out to Putin. All this anger is not getting humanity anywhere. Just send your love and your light out. We're not here to judge anybody. Send your love out to everybody, Ukraine, Russia, the whole world. Loving kindness from the heart, that we need more of it in the world. Just pure, unconditional love. What about you, Chris?
It's very hard to follow what you both said. You both made very strong points. I would certainly limit. I'm exactly like Rob. I very much limit what news I watch, but you have to stay informed at the same time to a degree, so that we're aware of even just being aware of what's being put out there, if that makes sense. And in itself, television is very hypnotic. In itself, it pulls us away from who we are. It's great to switch off and watch a film or something sometimes and just turn the mind off, don't get me wrong. But sometimes when we're sat in front of a box so much, that's not good for us. It's not good for us anyway. Takes us into that place. But I feel it's very important at this time to, if you're feeling overwhelmed, to meditate, to remember what Stephen said is really important. Try, if you feel yourself getting into an angry place, know that you can't fight fire with fire. I believe it was Gandhi that said, "An eye for an eye will blind us all."
Yeah.
That's what's going on, and we've been through this. We have to ask ourselves, we're going through something again that we've been through many times on this earth, and it's a cycle that needs to be broken. It's you've done this, so I'll do that, and it doesn't work. It never works. So and send your love and healing out, because the power of thought will always go where it's needed. I've seen some amazing things in the past 15 years with the power of prayer and the power of healing and transformational and physical improvements in people. And that's the power of energy that we can send out. We've just forgotten. A lot of us have forgotten. So we start to feel powerless. And when we feel powerless, we become vulnerable. But if we're in our power and we say, we're not having this, we're going to take this world and we're going to shape it into something that's much, much better. So that's what I would say.
Here. Can I just mention, Chris, there, just one last point there when you mentioned about the television. Well, why do you think the television is called, why do you think they have programs to program us, to recondition? You know, when you look at, the Americans call it cell phones. Well, look at the word cell, it's prison. The phone is a prison. Program, they're there to program us. The television was created to hypnotize us and program us. Anyway, we're going too deep.
Yeah, that might be for another time.
Can I mention something here, because it's
absolutely, Rob.
It's a slightly more very relevant but more general spiritual point. I over the years, right, I've been asked a lot of times why something has happened to somebody. It's particularly you'll all have experienced it, but particularly something tragic, maybe like the loss of a child or a miscarriage or something like that, right? And people and we get those things coming through, and people ask why they have this incredible guilt, they feel awful. And to put a perspective on it, it's very important to always remember that it's not always directly connected to your journey. It's the journey of the child. It could have been an inevitability. It just happens that was the mother or that was the father, but it's not to do with them. It's not punishing them for something. It's not and this is with all things. It can be to do with that other person's journey. Now, although you may get somebody terrible like Putin, as you said, Stephen, and it's hard to understand how he would do something like this. But that is his journey in some way. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And we're all on different journeys, and we tend to try and think that everything evolves around us, and that this is happening because of this, because of that, and it's not. It's happening because it's their journeys that they're on. That's not excusing them, but it's just need to be aware of it.
Part of the massive divine plan. And I firmly believe, people might shoot me for this, God forbid they don't, that sometimes spirits, before they return to the earth, choose to play certain roles. And I believe Putin and other leaders across the world choose that path. And that's where, look out of everything that happened, COVID, through the bad, good things always come out. Mm-hmm. Even after the Second World War, it united Europe. It will, positive things come out, but sometimes we need the dark. We need people to play those roles to really bring humanity closer together and create a better world. And really, again, going back to that word again, Rob, trust that everything's happening for a reason.
Yeah. No, it is. Yeah. And you touched on something, Stephen, you sort of said it as a comment without realizing possibly how profound it was. But it's the fact that we are all spirits having this human experience. And unfortunately, if you want to call it the human psyche, whatever you want to refer to it, that this could be part of the human experience, that we are experiencing as spirits. And I just take massive comfort by the fact that I know 100% that at some stage or other, I'll be returning home, and none of this will matter then. I'll be returning home. And that's a lovely thing to keep hold of,
Yeah, wonderful. Well, just really enjoyed this evening. I hope everybody who's listening or watching us has been able to receive something or resonate with the words spoken. It's been a fantastic hour. I don't know where it's gone.
It's gone so quick.
Well, we will have to do another soon enough, Rob, because I just feel, I know last time they always take such a shape. And
Can I leave you with an inspired story just very quickly, just to inspire? I don't know if I've told you this. It's quite a famous thing, but there was an anaesthetist in America, right, who was doing a study, right, of people who he was he was a scientist, was an anaesthetist, and he was working in a hospital in New York, and he was doing a study of people who get resuscitated, who have died for a time and then get resuscitated. And because he was finding how consistent their recollections were, and we'll have all heard about it, looking down on a a room and they'd go into a light and this type of stuff. But they were so consistent, he started collating this in a scientific way. But he recalls one story where there was a lady on an intensive care unit who had a cardiac arrest. Now, she made a very good recovery, actually, but she kind of flatlined for about 5 minutes, and they got her back. They kept it going, and they resuscitated her, and she made a recovery. And the anaesthetist comes along to her and said, would you mind if I just asked you a couple of questions if you experienced anything? And she goes, well, she said, oh, I did experience something, as a matter of fact. So he said, well, just tell me. And she gives this account that her body, she felt as if her spirit or her soul left her body, raised up. It was almost going as if she said it went through the ceiling up into the sky, you know. And then she said, I can tell you, on the roof of the hospital, there's a red trainer. So this doctor said, oh, right, okay, thank you, right. Anyway, curiosity got the better of him. So the next day, he gets the security guards, he goes upstairs onto the roof of the hospital, and there's a red trainer on the roof of the hospital.
Oh,
so
wow.
if you ever wanted unbelievable proof, that's it, you know. Yeah.
I bet they were gobsmacked.
They were, yeah. And this is from somebody who's a scientist, not a medium, not a spiritualist. He was looking at this just because he was collating all these pieces of information, which are all the same. But even he was blown away by that. He said he just stood there looking at this trainer, and there's just no way in the world that she could have ever known that, you know. And it was there like in a piece of guttering, you know. So incredible. So I thought I'd share that with you. Yeah.
Oh, amazing. What a great way to top off what has been a wonderful talk with you, Rob. I want to thank you for joining us, because I know you keep very, very busy. So I really appreciate you putting this time to one side.
No, you're welcome. Yeah. And I'm looking forward to next, give us a mention on for the next week, isn't it? Next Thursday?
Yeah, next Thursday at the Purple Mountain. Rob will be live in person with us, and he'll be doing a demonstration of mediumship 7 till 9, and Thursday the 10th of March, and places are available for that. It's a £10 donation per person. So if you're interested, just get in touch with us. And are you happy for people to get in touch with you, Rob?
That's fine.
For readings, etc.
Yeah.
And just a reminder also, we offer private readings, myself and Stephen, at the Purple Mountain, respectively. So if you're drawn to any of us here, any of our panel this evening, feel free to get in touch. We're very friendly folk. So we want to just give lots of love to everybody watching tonight. Thank you so much for being with us. Please click and subscribe if you're watching us on YouTube. Thanks so much, Rob. Till we speak again.
Thank you. Yeah. See you next week. Thanks.
Bye-bye to everyone.
Yeah, bless
bye-bye.
you. Bye-bye. Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye.